Welcome back to the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. This episode of the podcast, I interview Angela Gill Nelms. She is a founder and entrepreneur. She's been a COO, is on the board of director for some major schools here in Atlanta. We have a great conversation about her experience, as well as she helps a lot of companies scale and grow. And so we have a great conversation about leadership and culture and how to actually hire now for where your company is going to go. Really good conversation about how to make sure that you're hiring now and building a culture now that can also scale and grow as your company scales and grows. My book, Master Your First Job, right there, came out last year. Very happy to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the book. I'd love to give you a free copy of the book. This is the book that every young employee needs and every employer wishes they had. You can go to masteryourfirstjob.com/free. That's masteryourfirstjob.com/free. You can get a free copy of the book, free e-copy. It'll be emailed right into your inbox. You can also add it to your Kindle. There's also a link if you're like me and you like paper and you like highlighting and holding a book. There's a link to buy it on there as well. Let's dive into my conversation with Angela. Angela, thanks so much for being on the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. I'd love for you to take a few minutes and share a little bit about yourself and your story.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Jacob, for hosting me. I'm very excited. You were a guest on my podcast, Badass Leaders Podcast, and we had an amazing conversation, and I know this one is going to be one as well. So about me, who am I? Well, I would say from a high level, I am an executive, a leader, an entrepreneur. I also do blacksmithing, wood turning, beekeeping, some of that. My story started, I was one of those individuals who grew up in a very abusive childhood. I learned a lot of lessons about how to think strategically before I said things and how to really observe people's body language by growing up in that type of situation.
Yeah.
And then I early on pivoted. I wanted to be a doctor, but I thought I can't be a great mom and a great doctor. So I go through this phase, Jacob, in my life where when I was in high school, they said, you should be an engineer. And the Air Force tested me and they gave me the scholarship for engineering. And I said, I don't want to be an engineer. They are nerds. They absolutely have, tape on their glasses, pocket protectors, no sense of humor.
The whole thing.
Exactly. And so the fun part is that when I was 29, I went back to school as a single mom, a 29-year-old single mom with a special needs daughter, to get my degree in engineering. So I am a biomedical engineer. I spent the first part, and from Georgia Tech, I have to say that.
Okay.
And
there you go.
Yep, I had to put that little plug in there. And I spent the beginning of my career running and proctoring surgeries for clinical trials in the cardiac space. I really learned a lot about leadership working with individuals from different backgrounds, different cultures, different executive leadership styles that you get working with clinicians and nurses. And then I went and I ran research at Emory, and then I started and jumped into my first startup. So I've been COO of 3 different startups. And now I actually run a program. I'm the managing director of Biolocity, which is a program out of Georgia Tech and Emory, where we provide non-dilutive funding to teams that are in the healthcare space that we strongly believe that they have the opportunity to commercialize the product. Aside from that, personally, as I mentioned, I have a now 22-year-old special needs daughter who is the best human I've ever met. She's much better than what I am.
Yeah.
And she inspires me daily. I also was the victim of a kidnapping about 5 years ago. And so I've done a lot of work with individuals learning how to lead as humans and actually get to know people and thrive instead of just survive through whatever life challenges they have.
Several things that we did not talk about when I was on your podcast. So I have follow-up questions.
Okay,
I'll go in order here. Blacksmithing and beekeeping, 2 very different things that I'm very much interested in for different reasons. Blacksmithing, how did you get into that? And what do you make now?
Okay, that is a great question. So it was an instance where I was dating a guy. We were going to a vacation at John C. Campbell Folk School, which your listeners should definitely pull it up. It is amazing. It is like camp for adults. And the classes that they teach, you can do a week-long class. They are world-renowned experts. And it's anything from cooking classes to photography, He was going for wood turning. That was before I later learned to wood turn as well. But he was going for that. And because I didn't want to be in the same class as him, I was looking at the classes and I saw blacksmithing. And much of everything I do in life, I want to create something that's sustainable, unique, and can really put your thumbprint on, right? And so I thought, I'm going to try this blacksmithing class. I was the only girl in it. But my second day there, I got third-degree burns on my finger, and the instructor thought I was never coming back, but I fell in love with it. Blacksmithing, it's like leadership, right? And coaching people. You take this raw piece of metal. My favorite thing is to show people what the masterpiece looked like in its raw elements. So you take these raw pieces, right? And through very delicate negotiations with heat and the right amount of pressure and the right amount of shaping and grinding and all of that, you create something that can be used. I've made a lot of knives. Now, I will say, I'd never heard of Forged in Fire when I started it. And then after I started doing it, everyone's like, oh, you need to watch Forged in Fire. It's really big. And so listeners can find that on the History Channel. But that's how I got into blacksmithing. Now, beekeeping is, I have been fascinated with the science behind honeybees for years. Like, I have read the book, Thomas Seeley's book, Honeybee Democracy, probably 5 times. And it's really understanding, and it's, I would say anyone interested in leadership and understanding group dynamics should check it out. So much so that the team, like Thomas Seeley and some scientists from multiple universities, one of the universities was Georgia Tech, received a Golden Goose Award one year. And that's an award that when like basic science makes a huge impact in the world. And they studied the foraging behaviors of bees, and utilizing that information, they determined how in systems, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but listeners, you can Google it and find it, how the systems in like almost like not internet trafficking. I'm trying to think of what you call this, but hosting, basically how they send the signals out and route back and forth, and to do it in the most optimized fashion. They did that based off of the way that honeybees use their foraging behaviors and find the best nectar and pollen sources and all of that. And so I think the two of them are like, I like to make things that are sustainable. I love making the world a better place, and we need our honeybees. And also, I just love learning about the science of things.
Yeah, I love just in general, like the reason both those piqued my interest, and the wood turning. Like, I love finding something I don't know a lot about, and then like that it's fascinating, and then just learning about it. So like my reading list right now, I was looking last night, like my to read list or want to read list on Goodreads is 130 books deep right now. And I bet 3/4 of them are like very niche down. Like there's a couple like Neil deGrasse Tyson books about astrophysics that I know nothing about, but he's an expert. So I want to listen to him about that. There's one on why the world ran out of everything in 2020. Just like why the supply chain crisis happened. I'm like, that's such a specific topic, but I'm so interested. Like, in like beekeeping. I just added the beekeeping book to my reading list.
So how many, I was about to say, how many do you have on your list? Because you need to have one more. And Honeybee Democracy, absolutely. Okay. And you will not hate me for advising that for you. You will be fascinated. I know you.
I've thought about getting one of my buddies they have like one box that's like a little honeybee colony for honey. And when I have more land one day, I will have a little box.
I will hook you up, like, Jacob. I will come out there. We will make it happen. There you go. Done.
Yeah, I'm like, every once in a while, my algorithm online will be, I'll like one bee video, and then it's just honeybee, which I love it. I'm all for it. That's fascinating. And then you go into engineering, you're still involved. I know you've mentioned like your involvement with students. Like you and I have some overlapping there as far as pouring into the next generation. I want to talk about leadership. You know what? Before I get to leadership, I do have one more intro question here. Your first job. I don't want to skip past it. We talked about my book on your podcast, Master Your First Job. I want to know what your first job was.
Yes. Okay. My first paying job, I'm not going to count babysitting or anything like that. Like the first one I applied at a company and got paid for I was a cashier at Piggly Wiggly.
Yes.
And what still amazes me, Jacob, is that first off, I am very competitive. So back in those days, the cashiers, we used to get rated based on how fast we could scan things. And we actually had to count change and money by ourselves. Like,
Yeah, I had to do that
this
too.
is in
Yep.
the early 90s, right? And so I would go to the break room and look at the list, and I just wanted my name to be at the top of that. And what cracks me up now is that I got promoted to assistant manager. I was a senior in high school, and I was closing down the grocery store on the weekends. And I can't believe the amount of money and responsibility they gave me. What were they thinking? But it really helped me learn a lot about providing excellent service, because I saw some others that they would just scan things and ignore the person. Or my pet peeve, they would talk to the bagger, and I was just like, come on, like talk to the person who's actually there. So it was a really great jump into something fun.
Some of the stuff you mentioned, I mean, a lot of crossover with Chick-fil-A. Just like the amount of responsibility I had as a teenager, looking back, is a little bit scary.
Right?
I'm glad I was trustworthy, I guess, but I'm like, wow, I kind of, I had access to a lot of money. It's a good thing I was trustworthy, and just responsibility in general. That I'm grateful for it. And then,
And also managing people older than you as well.
yes. The first time I got promoted, I think I was 16, 7. No. And I'm like, this is what, like, there were adults working there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm in charge of you for this shift. That was very weird to me.
Yeah.
Especially early on.
Same.
Yeah.
But
Hard
can
to
I
get
tell
over.
you what my most fun early job was?
Tell me.
That will tie to the beekeeping?
Yeah.
So when I graduated high school, the summer before I went off to college the first time, I worked in an entomology lab.
Okay.
On termite research. And I worked for the person who helped develop the Centricon system.
Yeah.
And so
I've got them in my house.
Yeah, we would dye filter paper with these fluorescent dyes and put these bait stations all different places, and then watch how the termites migrated between them. It was the coolest summer job ever.
Yeah, no free ads, but shout out to the Centricon system. That is a cool summer job. That's great. Yeah, and I think too, something you said, like realizing early on that high standard of excellence, and this idea that, like, I believe everything worth doing should be done to a high standard, and like should be done well. A few episodes ago, I had on Lou Mangello. He hosts a Disney podcast. We had some crossover here, but he gets brought into organizations about. He does not work for Disney, but he is very much like, his name is tied with Disney. And so he gets brought in to do keynote speaking and workshops around like what Disney does well and how to apply it to other organizations. And one of the things we talked about is it's free and it's not a secret. It's just, you want to, have that level of service, just exceed expectation in everything you do. Just go a little bit above and beyond, like do something a little bit better. Something as small as creating eye contact, actually talking to the person in front of you. It's just amazing to me how many businesses don't do those little things well. And when you teach your team to do that well, how, especially now, something as little as the employee talked to me and made eye contact will blow you away service wise. And I'm like, these are free things that you can do in your organization that takes maybe a little bit more effort. But
it makes the day more enjoyable, right?
Absolutely.
Like, seriously, how many conversations can you have with the bag person there during the day till you're bored out of your mind? But every client who comes in has something unique and different about them. So
that's right.
I think it's more enjoyable. That I say to my daughter, when she was younger, we were listening to a radio station, and it was Mother's Day, and they had people calling in of things their mothers always say. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is my daughter going to say when I die that I used to always say, right? And she's probably 9 at the time. And I will tell you what I asked her. I said, what do you think I always say? And I expected her to say something like, hurry up, or, the things I always hear in my head.
Yeah.
And she said, I love you. That's what you always say. Oh,
that's
yeah.
Gotta be...
It was so amazing. But also what I did after that, very much to your mantras that you said, Jacob, is I started thinking, you know what? I want to kind of brainwash her into what I would always say. And so I started saying things like, anything worth doing is worth doing well. So that is my version of that mantra. And I strongly believe it.
Me too. And again, it's something that if you can, I want to talk about culture a little bit. Like, if you can instill that in a culture, like, imagine the level of service you're going to bring no matter what industry you're in, is if everyone's on board with this idea that if I'm going to do something, it needs to be done well. You hire that way, you train that way, it gets reinforced again and again and again in a good way in your organization. Let me ask you this, because I think that culture is a word thrown around a lot. You and I both talk about it. Like, how do you balance this idea of like this operational, like operations are hard, right? And also trying to have like a really busy operation. You talk about like the grocery store, scanning a bunch of stuff, being fast. And I work with a lot of Chick-fil-A businesses. Like, that's operations and culture is a big challenge. How do you think you balance both well, where growth can be possible and also maintain a really healthy culture?
I think that one of the keys is that you have to, from my perspective, you have to put culture constantly on the forefront.
Hmm.
And I often see that operations and logistics and checking off boxes or to do tasks are fun. They're really basic and simple. That's the easy stuff. And so people will fall into that as that's what they need to do. And oftentimes, especially if you're an entrepreneur, the people who are funding your business, they're really thinking about what's your latest results? What are your stats? All these types of
Yeah.
things. So it's also easy to get into that. However, if you start from the very beginning and every day you're really thinking about the people, the humans, and the impact that you're making and making sure everyone is aligned in that, then all of those other things really magically kind of fall into place. I think there's a difference between the culture of we have fun. And I think the society right now thinks that culture is, as we talk about, the ping pong tables and the things like that, right? Culture can also be that you see humans as humans. You have a culture of speaking up, a culture of listening, of leaders listening, and you have a culture of leaders saying, "Okay, I totally screwed that up. Let's sit down as a team and try and come up with a new strategy." So those are the things within culture. And when I was just mentoring a new CEO yesterday, and he was asking me this, they have the 3 co-founders and they're about to scale. And I said, you know what? I would sit down, all of you, do a retreat so you're in the same place and really sit down and map out what your vision and what your values are going to be. And those values should be things that when you then hit the hard times, you take a step back and say, okay, what do our values say about how we should handle this? And I think it's the same thing with culture. Like, what have we intentionally, and it should be an intentional setting up culture. And some of those things, such as allowing everyone in the room to have a voice, encouraging people to think outside the box. I actually encourage mistakes because I think we all learn more from mistakes. So I'm like, go fast. And if you make a mistake, no worries. We'll just sit down and think about it and figure out how we're going to do something better. And I also encourage leaders to, in creating a culture of transparency, you have to be the first one and you have to lead that way.
Yeah. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability. Transparency breeds transparency. Like, you can't expect it from everybody else and, and not do it yourself. That's for sure. You hit several big things. I was laughing when you said ping pong tables, because I have a friend who owns a video business, and one day he did a shoot at some company here in Atlanta, and I was like, "Hey, how was the shoot?" I was like, "What kind of company was it?" And he was like, "One of those companies has got the ping pong tables and beer on tap, but the terrible culture." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I
Yes.
know, I know, plenty of those." And I think that the mistake there is like culture becomes, oh, we're fun, and by fun, we've got the beer on tap and unlimited PTO, and we have pool tables, and we have happy hour every day at 5, but it's like the way you do work, there's no culture, is kind of how I see it. Of like, it's just like, yeah, it's words on a wall, right? It's our mission statement and vision and values are on the wall over there, but if you asked our 100 employees, 99 of them couldn't tell you what they were.
And you know what? Probably 99 of them would laugh when they see them. I worked at a company once
Yeah.
early in my career, and our values were on the back of our badge. And we all made fun of them. One of the values was speak up. And we laughed because in that company, if you speak up, you're not the one getting the next promotion. You're not getting that. So I also, for values, I'm a big proponent of not putting them on your walls and instead utilizing them to recognize people who are actually following through. That's how you remember what
I
they
love
are.
that.
And then, yeah, and then once a year, I encourage especially small teams to sit down and evaluate your values again. Your team, the people, everything's changed. So Say, okay, wait, we're all in the room. Are these our values? Are we living them? Are they appropriate for the stage that we are and where we're going next? Which I think a lot of leaders also forget to think about where we're going next and what that inflection point looks like. And then be okay with saying, okay, this value that was really critical when we were 4 people is
Yep.
not the same value that we really need at 40 or
Right.
400.
Yeah. I mean, I like what you said there about it being both who you are and who you want to be. I think you have to
Yes.
balance both of those well. And just I think you hit the nail on the head of involving people. Like it can't be just. I think it's important for your leadership team to go away and like define mission and values, but it can't just be that. If you have we'll say a large company, you've got 100 plus employees, and 3 people decide what the culture is. Like, and they just say it. Like, hey, it's going to be this period, and you've got 97 people who weren't involved in coming up with those. I mean, what they end up being are just words at the end of the day.
Those are the 97 people who are complaining to their friends over the weekend about how much they hate their job and how they can't wait to find another opportunity.
And laughing at the back of their badge, saying we've never once done
Yes.
this. Um, uh, Mark Miller, he worked for Chick-fil-A for a long time. Brilliant author. I've like several of his books are over here. His book Culture Rules is very good.
Yes. I
And
love that book.
yeah,
I
it's
did
great.
not know he was a Chick-fil-A person.
So he worked at Chick-fil-A for like 40 years as the vice president
Wow.
of high performance leadership. Um,
Yeah. It's a great
so
book.
culture is created by default or by design is something he said. Now, I like that
Yes.
a lot of like your culture in your company will be defined for you if you do nothing about it, or you can design it. But I think what we've talked about, like designing it, and it is you have to be intentional about the way you design it, right? Like you need to involve your team. It actually needs to define who you are and who you want to become. And I think you hit the nail on the head of like reevaluating and
Mm-hmm.
it being a great foundation to come back to whenever things don't go well. And I think a great example of this is honestly Chick-fil-A. Like Chick-fil-A's mission statement was created in like the time of the biggest financial crisis of the company. And so it's like I think it makes more of an impact that was created when things were not going well and not when Chick-fil-A is what it is today, which is very different than what
Right.
it was in the late 80s whenever they made this mission statement. But it still is like it's the North Star, right? It's whenever
Yes.
we are not doing X, we still have this mission and these values that we can do well, and that's going to get you back on track, right? Of like the growth might not be exponential and straight up, but it might be a slight incline, but at least you have that North Star and you know where you're going. It's clearly defined and people are bought in.
Well, you know, what thing I love about what you're just saying about that too, Jacob, is that I often see that people think there's a right time to write a mission statement. There's a right time to talk about culture. There's a
Yeah.
right time to do all this. And I love the adage of the tree planting, right? The best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. The next
Hmm.
best time is today.
Yep.
And so I would encourage people, like, don't wait for the biggest crisis. Don't wait for your record year. Don't wait for everyone to have free time on their calendar to make these things a priority. These things need to be the priority now, and then have everything else work around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just such a big proponent of culture. I know that you and I both work with business owners and business leaders on this area. I know something you do is like you work with CEOs in like their leadership teams. What's one mistake even seasoned founders make when it comes to building teams that scale? Because I think it's one thing to, like you said, you've got a team of 4. Well, now the company changes, right? Like now you've grown, you've got 24 employees now that are full time. Your business is maybe at that point next as far as like, net revenue goes. How do you make sure you build a team that can scale? Like what are some of those mistakes that founders make when doing that?
Well, one of the things that I see, and especially we're talking about, you just mentioned that early phase, which I am really deep in right now with the entrepreneurs that I work with.
Yeah.
And so one of the things is that I see that these leaders, when they're trying to scale at this stage, they really focus on what they think they need right now in this moment and not what they need next. And when I say that, I want to use an example. So a team that I'm working with right now, they feel as if they suddenly need a CEO, and this is a young startup. They suddenly need a CEO to fill out this grant. And so they're really just trying to find anyone to be their CEO. Like, whoa, wait, no. That is that will be a disaster. Another scenario is a team that is hiring for now and they need sales. So they go out and they get a seasoned professional in sales. Okay. And they don't talk to the other salespeople who reported to them on the down low and find out what kind of leader they were. Right. And so this person comes in and they're not someone who can build what's next, which is a team of amazing people who can take you past that one sale. Okay. And then they have this high paid, high power, known in the industry executive who's closed a couple of deals. So the board's happy about that, but they're going nowhere for next because they haven't built that foundation of what they need to look for next. The other mistake that I hear early on is we as entrepreneurs, our babies are beautiful. We love whatever our product is, and it is absolutely, of course, the best in the world. Why else would we be doing it, right? And so they hire people that affirm them, because entrepreneurs also are really nervous and they're afraid of failure, just like we all are. But you're really afraid of failure if it's your baby on the line, okay? So then when they're making those hires, instead of hiring people who are willing to challenge you and say things that you may not want to hear, or the people who can do everything while you're not in the room, instead of hiring those, they hire the person who says, oh, yes, I love your baby is beautiful. And I know how to make, put you on a yacht one day making money. So I think it is those things. It's hiring for what you think you need now and not next. So not really building that foundation, that solid structure. And then also thinking about the type of people is that you're not hiring an amazing individual contributor in these phases. You really need to hire someone who's going to be empowering to that area of the organization to help them be successful.
I'm glad you clarified some stuff, because I'm like, okay, how do you balance that right now and next? And I like your example. That's so funny. We need a CEO for a grant. It's like, well, we need a warm body. It's like, well, you actually need a
This
CEO.
Is a true statement.
No. I like this. 3 C's is something I definitely took and stole from Chick-fil-A as far as hiring, because I think Chick-fil-A does it well, and other companies do this. It's just labeled this way, probably differently. Character, chemistry, competency of hiring in that order. If you get someone who's a really good character fit, I'll say culture fit, like we were talking about, then do they mesh well with the team? To your point, like, can they take this team to the next level? Like, do they have good chemistry to grow and scale this team? Then lastly, can they fill out this grant form? Let's make that the last.
Because we can teach them how to, I can teach someone how, I can actually teach most people how to sell. I can teach most people how to do these other things. And if I don't know a skill, I can find someone to mentor them and help them with those competencies. Right. But I can't teach someone to speak up when they've made a mistake so that we can fix it. I can't teach someone to actually care about their colleagues and care about what they're doing.
You're right.
Those are inherent traits.
Yeah, I worked in learning and development at Chick-fil-A, and I'd like to say I'm a pretty good trainer. And I've told people, I'm like, I really feel like I can train anyone to do anything. I really feel that way if I'm on my A game. But the other stuff, it's near impossible. It's hard to just go back and be like, yeah, I saw this core trait that was kind of a big red flag when we hired them, and what do you know? It didn't go away now that they're in a role that has a lot more responsibility as you scale. And those are the things that are almost impossible to fix.
Your last statement that I almost cut off, so apologies for that. I just got so excited when you said that because it reminded me of something. The other mistake I see even seasoned professionals, leaders do when they're trying to scale and whatnot is they keep the toxic or the brilliant jerks around too long.
Yes.
And I will tell you this, my perspective is this. I think in my career, I have only fired 2 employees. Those 2 were fired because they lied, these integrity issues, right? That's what I consider fire. Now, I have transitioned several employees either out of the company because they weren't a good fit, and I've worked with them to say, like, this is not a good fit. Let's give some time and you can continue working. We're going to do some career coaching and try and get you another job. I found several people another job while they still worked in my company. Or I have transitioned them out of one role that it wasn't within their working genius type thing into another area where they're very successful. But what I see oftentimes are the brilliant jerks who are producing numbers, but they're killing the company. And the leadership team is terrified to get rid of that person because they really are often results driven and they don't want to lose what they think is the power. But the power is actually all the other people, and you need to find something to support them.
And going back to where this question kind of started, what you were talking about, that's the right now versus the what's next, right? It's like, are you willing to take the hit? Small hit in the grand scheme of things in the now, as far as the toxic jerk who it brings us in a lot of sales, to use that example. Can we take the small sales hit now to bring in someone who maybe is not the best salesperson, but a way better fit to lead the sales department later as we grow and scale? So another point you made, surrounding yourself with good people, especially as a founder, and not just yes men or yes women to come and say, yes, that's amazing, great job. I think a skill that every business leader, owner, CEO, founder should hire for, maybe it's your first hire, is I think most organizations are filled with good people who are problem solvers, right? Like,
yes,
most high achieving organizations, you just have plenty of people who, like, a fire comes out and there's 4 people to run and go put it out. But who can actually go and find the fire? You need problem finders, I think, is what you need in your organization. Someone who's going to poke a hole in every idea because they're good at it, because it's good for the company. Because then you bring in your amazing team of problem solvers to go fix that problem. And I think it takes some humility to bring someone in who's going to be like, hey, that idea is not going to work, and here's why. And I think there's balance here, right? I think you don't need someone who's just a negative Nelly and just like shoots down everything,
right?
But who's really going to find the core of like, hey, this is a good idea, but it's missing this one piece. Let's solve for that one piece so this idea can take off. Because again, like, for the long-term health, growing and scaling, like we were talking about, you need problem finders in your organization. I think that's something I'm really passionate about, because I consider myself a problem finder, and I feel like I got a bad rap for a little while growing up. And I'll say, I had to learn as a young leader that if you bring up every problem, all of a sudden it just seems like it's not a big deal. Bring it up when it's important. But I think it's a skill missing in a lot of organizations, these people that can help you find problems, because I feel like everyone's got problem solvers.
You know what I love about that, Jacob? I was just thinking, I just hired a new associate director, Jessie, on my Biolocity team. She started last week on Monday. She's absolutely brilliant. She is amazing. And the thing I told her on her very first day, I said, okay, here's the deal. What I want you is you're onboarding and you're learning these processes. I want you to tell us, what are we doing that's stupid? Like, what are we doing that we should not be doing? And I said, I want you to be thinking about that. Now, the thing that I didn't purposely do that as a leadership moment, but then afterwards I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I think more leaders should say that to their team members, because then when they're coming up with ideas and all of this, they feel empowered, they feel supported, they're not anxious to do it. It becomes, once again, a part of the culture of growing to be the best that we absolutely can be. And it's coming from the top down saying, hey, look, we might have been doing something for forever. If you think feedback is warranted, I want to hear it. Like, that is your job to do. Especially the best time to encourage someone to do that is during onboarding, when they're going through those processes and seeing them with fresh eyes.
And this is tying it all back together of, you want a culture of feedback, or a culture of like, we admit more wrong and we've fixed the little things and do them better. Start with onboarding. If someone's like, hey, there's 2 of the same form in here. And it's like, wow, the last 20 people didn't tell me that. They were probably just excited for their new job. And, but thank goodness you brought it up. I would have changed it 20 times ago. And to model that from day one and then listen to it and take action from it, like, that's going to do dividends for your culture than just, again, a word in an onboarding packet that's just, oh yeah, they want to be vulnerable and transparent. And I read that once.
And they actually feel like they're giving an impact. Right, exactly.
That's right.
And they actually feel like from day one, they're making an impact. You know how many, especially your high performers, really struggle at the start of because they think, oh, I'm doing all of this silly work, busy work, right, to actually get started. I'm not making an impact. But now what you're doing is you're giving them a gift. You're changing the future of this company from the very first time you walk through this door.
And like, not everything's a trick. I'll say this isn't like a
life hack,
man behind the curtain. But like, do you buy an extra 3 months because week 1 they get to make an impact on the company? Like, did they stay longer because they know, like, oh, this company actually cares about me because they actually listened to something I said? Like, how much longer of a window of retention does that give you with that person? Or like, how much harder they work? Study. Yeah. And I think it'd be hard to study. I'm like, you have better connection than I would to do that.
Love to see.
Yeah. Like, how much equity does it buy you with that person?
Yeah.
I'll go back to something I said on your podcast, which is one of my old bosses just said, if you take care of people, they'll take care of the business. And I think that's both on a personal level, but also within the business. Like, If I know that I'm being listened to and being taken seriously, like that's a lot of equity that buys me of wanting to work hard and be there long term. That's for sure. And I've seen that on the employee side of working. I mean, I worked at the same company for 10 years because of that, because I kept having leaders who I felt like cared for me personally, challenged me, and that I was able to have a real impact in the business I was working in, which was really important to me. I'm highly competitive like you. And if I felt like I was going nowhere, I probably would have left a long time ago.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. I love that.
Angela, if there's one takeaway people could take from our conversation today and that would make an impact, what would it be?
Well, I briefly mentioned this idea of humans as humans. And I would say, going back to your Culture Rules book, which I love, another book I love is Culture Map.
Okay.
And if you haven't read it should be
So
like
it's
what,
getting
number
written down.
141 on your list. It is that take time to listen, to respect people, and get to know them as humans. We talked about the grocery store, right? Get to know your customers as humans, not just the person putting 10,000 things of vegetables that you have to look up the numbers for, right? See them as humans. See your newly empowered employees as human beings. Get to know them, and not as a position on the org chart, not as a number in statistics or results, but actually as humans. And when you do that, then your culture will amplify in a positive way. I promise you, your results will as well. And as you mentioned, your retention, because people want to be somewhere where they are seen, heard, and appreciated.
I love that. And I think we're in this, I don't know how many big waves of tech we've had, because what do you define as tech? But I'll say I think we're the most different and biggest wave of technology since 2007 when the iPhone came out. With between COVID and AI, like what that did to digitize experiences, both at
Yes.
work and not. I think what's going to win in this new age, and I feel very strongly about this, is businesses and people who really prioritize genuine human connection. And that doesn't mean not
Yes.
using AI, but I think prioritizing it and making a concerted effort to have that a part of your culture, that's going to win in both in life and in business and in the next decade or so. I think that's going to be really important to stick out. And I haven't got, going back to the grocery store, going back to the beginning. Anytime I take my daughter to Publix, I love Publix, so free ad for them. They have free kids for cookies. My goodness. Nope. Free cookies for kids. Whoops.
Like, I don't want the kids, but I do want the
good. I'm good with my two. They have free cookies for kids. Goodness. And every single time we check out, one of the cashiers will always offer a sticker. And I'm like, my daughter loves stickers. It's the smallest thing. It costs them nothing. It costs the team member an extra 2 seconds to say, would you like a sticker, and hand it to her. And I'm like, I will continue to shop here because I enjoy it. I'm like, oh, you saw that I had a daughter. You weren't just looking out the numbers, to your point.
Yes, exactly.
I just think genuine human connection is going to win. So I love that as your takeaway. Angela, where can people connect with you, find you, work with you?
Well, first off, you should check out my podcast, which you can also listen to Jacob's episode on that. Right. And it's Badass Leaders Podcast. So type in all 3 words and wherever you listen or watch your podcast to. I highly recommend YouTube. It's my favorite, but wherever you want to. I also, I just finished trademarking Be Brave, Be Badass. So if you put that into your browser, Be Brave, Be Badass, it will pull up everything to all of my social media handles, as well as my website is angelagillnelms.com. And I work with teams on coaching how to do retreats to delve into some of these. I also am very passionate about conflict resolution. I love conflict, and I love helping other people understand how you can take conflict to cohesion. So there's just some ways to find me.
I love it. And I'll have those 3 things linked in the episode description. So save you some time. Just click the link below and you can find Angela there. Angela, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Waves Business Coaching Podcast.
This was so amazing, Jacob. I love having conversations with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for watching and listening to this episode of the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. Take care.